Hi all, on Play Chess and also streaming to YouTube. Okay, yeah, so this is continuing on from last week. We're going to look at some games, the best of the best. Let's move that over. Chess. The best of the best, 1920 to 1929. So this is a classic, celebrated game now. Aron Nimzowitsch against Arthur Hakansson. So this is a very interesting game, I believe. E4. One slight thing that's concerning me for tonight's broadcast is I can't see the kibitzers on Play Chess. Actually, I don't know how I've managed to do that. Just one moment. Oh, observer list. Got it. Yeah, view observer list. Okay, sorted. Okay, let's add actually a kibitzer and check auto live book. So, who is Nimzowicz's opponent? Also, it'll be interesting to find out. Arthur Hakansson. There's a number of games in the chessgames.com database. Well, 19. Just doesn't say much about him, but let's. So anyway, let's have a look. So this is for a match, the first game in which it appears pawn sack, and according to I think there's some notes by Raymond King, which I believe are copyright free. He says the idea of the pawn sack in this game is to overprotect a strategical point with a view to cramping the enemy forces. So okay, we have e6, d4, d5, e5, so it's an advanced French defense. And Nimzowitsch now plays queen g4. And we have an amazing concept here actually. C takes d4, this overprotection business. I want to sort of mention, why would we overprotect e5? It's a strong strategic point, but if you imagine, you know, we can overprotect e5 from all sorts of places. Just imagine our rooks were behind e5, a bishop there. This e5 is like locking down black's pawn structure, and in particular with this pawn there, it's the f6 break that such an overprotection, especially if there were doubled rooks, it will almost be difficult to free black's games. There'd be pressure underneath. There'd be so much pressure on that central strategic point that it would be impossible to sometimes get rid of that locking key. So bear that in mind, this overprotection concept. Some people deny the whole concept exists or its usefulness, but I always believed it's with a central point. It's not overprotecting weaknesses, it's with a key central point. And e5 for white is the key central point, usually of overprotection. So we have knight f3, knight c6, bishop d3, f5. So f6 is then ruled out later if white's just keeping that, which he does. We've got this central point, still going to build up loads of pressure. And somehow it's a prison for black's pieces. This structure, if this is central point, is maintained, somehow the black pieces are not particularly active in this game or this position. Knight ge7, now we have knight g6, and one way of increasing the pressure is not just directly by adding force behind e5, it's also to chase away these guys, you know, this and this. If we can chase away these guys, then what exactly happens? Is this some sort of magic or something? What exactly happens if black's not in contact with e5 and white is? Well, let's see. h4, queen c7, so a bit of a fight for that. Rook e1. So white's plan is now clear. He's given up a pawn, but cares when, if ever he recovers it, provided his pawn at e5 is maintained as an instrument to cramp black's game. There's no idea of an attack in h4 as in the opponent's king. Its objective is solely to pave the way for the removal of some of the pressure on the pawn on e5. So ideally both of these knights would be kicked away from e5. The pawn sacrifice comes under the category of a sacrifice for the sake of blockade. Okay, so we have bishop c5, bishop d7, but probably better was bishop f8. Actually, you know, even from an engine point of view, it doesn't consider white to be a pawn down here, even after bishop c5, which is the better recommendation. It considers white to have an edge in this position. In fact, let's have a look. You know, it considers this, and actually c3. Let's have a quick look at this line. It's threatening it's going to b5, and just have a look at this line. Why would this be better for white? Why? White's a pawn down. I think you can see it's cramping, and it's almost as if there's a disconnection in black's position here. This cramping effect seems almost dislocating black's pieces. White's pieces are free on the c file to build up pressure, and there might even be bishop a6 at some point. So even with that apparently better idea, white's still technically better in this position. I wanted to, you know, maybe try and put something more precise to it, rather than sort of claim overprotection does something. Yeah, just from an engine point of view, white's just better here. Black is cramped. You can see this bishop's a prisoner in the pawn chain. The rooks are not connected. But that's the better continuation apparently. In the game, it was really passive. Black played bishop d7. And now we have a3, which could of course go like this. Black castles b4. Now white could have just won the exchange, actually, it seems, with h5 if he wanted to, but he didn't want to, because here there's knight g5 threatening knight f7, and if rook e8, knight f7 hits the rook. Now winning the exchange here is not a big deal at all, even from an engine point of view. It's not a big deal at all. Nimzowitsch is absolutely right here. Winning the exchange here is nothing. It goes back to an equal position. In fact, black has got the prospect of g5 as well, maybe with some sort of attack. So the materialistic idea of winning the exchange is not worth it here with this set of forcing moves. It will just ruin the entire blockade situation. So we have instead b4. So the idea is relentless. Get rid of these knights away from this strategic point. Maybe this can be considered an advanced form of centralizing pieces, and basically like decentralizing the opponents, and even prepared to not win material for that sake. So that's the key goal here. a6 was played here. If, yeah, maybe king b8. If king b8, c3 might be a good try, maybe. This situation, hitting the knight. This should be favouring white, I would say. Even with bishop e3 here. Bishop takes a7. Yeah, white's just crashing through here. For example, king c7. We just got a crushing attack That's pretty clear. B5 here, knight d4, and Nimzowitsch writes, with complications which of course White, had he been so minded, could have avoided by simply playing bishop b2. But according to well, technical analysis, this is crushing anyway. This is like fairly crushing this position. Sorry, not there. Queen a4. If we go knight takes, bishop b6, bishop takes. Let's have a look at this. Check. I think White ends up being better anyway. Yeah, White's better anyway. Okay, so yeah, in the game, so a6 was played. We have, so that stops this kicking of the knight away from e5. We have h5, so we have decentralization here. Bishop d2, and yeah, it looks as though somehow Black's game is fairly dead. So this is an example also prophylaxis, because there's no way it seems Black's got any counterplay here. I think it's a pretty bad prison, especially for this bishop on d7. It's a pretty bad prison here. We have h6, a4, g5, as though there might be some attempt to sort of get some play. That's just ignored. This one's kind of decentralized as well. b5, f4, queen g4. The queen is well placed here according to Nimzowitsch. Knight b8. So both of these knights have been kicked away from e5, and the king is actually in a totally bad place here. That's a key thing here. White just needs to open the c file, and it looks as though the king's in a really bad way. So c3, trying to open up that c file. Rook e8, his only move. It will be noted that the overprotector with the rook on e1 now has the c file without any trouble to himself. In order to avoid loss of material, Black has to submit to curious regrouping of his forces. So we have c takes d4, threatening, yeah, this, king d8, rook c1, queen b6. This is starting to get really horrible, and you can start to get a clue why ChessGames.com nicknamed this game. There's a pun associated with this game, women's prison. You might be understanding the pun at ChessGames.com soon, after a5 is played. Queen a7, b6, queen a8. The queen finds herself in a position to which, as a rule, she would only be consigned in a problem, as in composition. Okay, so we have rook coming to the 7th here, knight f5, knight c3, bishop e7. White's playing now knight takes d5, trying to get rid of maybe Black's only active piece here. Knight takes, knight takes. So Black hasn't got many active pieces at all. In fact, a lot of pieces are on the back row, and there's two bishops on the second row. Now, I wonder if you can guess a good move in this position for White. So Nimzowitsch is not entirely bad tactically here. So I wonder if you can guess White's play here. Any ideas? What would you play here with White? Any ideas? 200 points. 96, no, it's a good move. It's a good move, 96. It is winning actually, but there's an even more crisper move. There's an even crisper move than 96. Give yourself 100 points for that. There's an even more crisper move than 96 check. If you check out the forcing moves, even the most outrageous forcing moves, sometimes they do stuff. Yeah, even the most outrageous forcing moves do stuff. Think of them as if-then conditions. If you're into programming, if-then conditions, if-then triggers. And the forcing moves, pretty clear-cut one here. Yeah. Bang. After knight takes. Knight e6 is checkmate. Now, as I say, some people deny the whole concept exists. They think it's something fanciful, dreamt up, this idea of overprotecting e5. Let's have a look at this particular opening. Does it actually exist in modern times? Let's have a quick look again. So we had e5 and we had queen g4. There's 81 games with this. And it's thought to be that there is a method against this whole thing though. I think it was Botvinnik which that there is a method against this. I think this is like the main line nowadays why this isn't so hot. I think it might have to do with queen c7 and this and this and this, and there's an idea of I thought there's an idea of later maybe f6. I think the idea might be f somehow I think this is equal this. Yeah, it's just a dangerous idea. Even with that main line, it is actually a dangerous idea, this pawn sack. But I'm not sure how to categorically prove what's going on here. Is it just the case that black technically had very bad king safety later? But with the pawn on e5 though, you could say, where is the king actually going? It can't go to the king side, so it was kind of logical it tried to castle queen side. So the cramping effect of the pawn does actually cast concrete issues for king safety at the very least. Would you agree? Having this pawn here, this cramping pawn, there are some actual king safety implications here for where the black king castled. But yeah, this iron grip on the position, white's piece is also pretty central and coordinated. This iron grip, it was easy to make mincemeat out of black from this position, because black also didn't have much counterplay. Yeah, it's a massacre. It's a massacre, an overprotection massacre. So does the concept exist? I mean, 1 if you think the concept of overprotecting e5 exists, or 10 if you think it doesn't. I personally think it does. And he had another immortal game, but that was kind of made up. I mean, I'm not entirely sure this is a real game either, but it might be. But there is actually an immortal overprotection game still, just to reinforce this theme of e5. Yeah, let's have a look at the immortal overprotection game. I'll just to compare and contrast. So this is kind of made up against Systemson. This particular game, yes, Hakansson sounds familiar, doesn't it, to Systemson? But this is someone sort of mocking him. It's quite funny. I thought it was quite funny at the time. I wonder if I can paste it in. Might be quite a bit to paste in. I'm hoping it's possible. Oh, too large. Oh no. Oh dear. The game data is too large. Oh dear. That's a shame. I do want to show you it. Digital commentary. E4. So this is an example of my system by Aron Nimzowitsch. Anderson started the sacrificial style, Morphy and Grunfeld the pure attacking style, Steinitz the positional style, Tarash the scientific style, Lasker the style of styles, Capablanca the mechanical style, Alekhine the style of brilliant as brilliant as sunlight. But it's a generally known fact that originality and modernism were introduced by me as my own personal inventions and enthusiastically imitated by the world of chess. Let me just zoom this. This is mocking Nimzowitsch, right? For the ridiculously small sum of 10 marks, the reader can confirm all this in my monumental work, My System, published by B. Kagan. Before time, chess was so naive and undistinguished. One or two brutal opening moves, each one involving a vulgar, obvious threat, a common banal sacrifice, a painful, elementary, bestial, raw checkmate. And that was chess. Then I appeared on the scene and the chess world paid heed. Okay, he carries on. But anyway, so we have E6. And then H4. This is a bit of a piss take of Nimzowitsch. H4. My oldest and latest thought in the opening. Yeah? To the chess addict nurtured on spineless convention, this move comes as a slap in the face, but calm down. You cannot be expected to understand such moves. Forgive me, it's not your fault. Until now, no one has opened your eyes and ears. Wait a little while and they'll pass before you a miracle of overprotection of more than earthly beauty. Okay? So black plays d5. Black, of course, has no suspicion, whatsoever about the dangers of white overprotecting here. Okay. So we have e5. And now a move of elemental delicacy. We'd attest as a matter of principle such words as power and strength. In the first place, such banal expressions make us uncomfortable. And in the second place, we like even less the brutalizing tendency which such words imply. Wherein lies the beauty of this e5? Why is this move so strong? The answer is as simple as it is astonishing. The move is strong because it is weak. Weak, that is only in the traditional sense. In reality, that is to say, it is not the move of the pawn on e5 that is weak, a tremendous difference. In former times it is true that it was customary to reject any move which was created a weakness. Today, thanks to me, this view is obsolete. For look, my dear reader, the fact is that the pawn on e5 is weak obliges white to protect the pawn more and more until at last the state of overprotection arises, as if it were of itself. But, as we have seen, overprotection is in practice equivalent to victory. Hence it follows automatically that the weak move, e5, is a certain road to triumph. The rest, more or less, is a matter of technique. So let's have a look. c5. d4. It's quite clear that it's more profitable for white to first provoke c5 and then play d4 rather than the other way around, where it is the customary course. For if white first plays d4, then there follows c5, and white's d-pawn is under attack. But here, clever transposition of moves, the situation has changed completely. For now, black's pawn is suddenly attacked by white's pawn. C takes d. And we have now the move h5. I don't know how many of you have seen this immortal overprotection game. Okay, so h5. Right. All very clever, original and decisive. Of course, the ordinary run of people this is Nimzowitsch speaking, not me, who envy my every spark of genius, or someone mocking Nimzowitsch, but I cannot follow my line of reasoning, for even free paces outdo themselves in sneering at my moves here, with poison dripping epithets. Bizarre. The text move creates confusion in the whole black army and prepares for the annihilating invasion of the queen 18 moves later. So we see queen b6. Yeah. h6. Okay. An avaricious dullard would never hit on this deeply conceived pawn sacrifice. Knight takes h6. Queen h5. The reason for this becomes clear after the next move, g6. Black threatens to begin a successful siege of the weakling on e5. So now we have queen h2. To every fair-minded observer, this move must come as a revelation. All of the previous manoeuvres now become clear. White has completed his development brilliantly and proceeds to overprotect e5. Black, against this, black is helpless. So knight f5, bishop d3. Note the splendid coordination of white's pieces here. While the e-pawn and the king's bishop completely blockade black's position, the development of the overprotective forces takes place behind the broad backs of these sturdy blockaders. We have knight c6, knight f3. As a rule, this is a routine move, but here it is strikingly original, and as such occupies a place in the treasury of my intellectual property. h5, old stuff. Yeah, trying to stop g4. This is apparently old stuff. Okay, so we've got this grip here in this fictional game on e5. Should it do anything here? b3. A deep trap. Oh. Which b3, a deep trap which will soon become apparent. We have bishop g7. How black must have rejoiced when he anticipated his formidable opponent in the occupation of long diagonal. But instead we get bishop f4. Bishop f4 was played instead. b3 had only been a trap and bishop b2 had not been intended at all. The position of black's bishop on g7 is now quite pointless. Bishop e7 would have been better. A bishop on e7. We have bishop d7, knight bd2, rook c8. Black no longer has any good moves. King e2. Again, an extraordinarily deep move. White sees through black's plans, and in addition he prepares for a particularly powerful continuation of his strategy of overprotection. Okay, we have knight b4, just what white was waiting for. Knight e1. Okay, so there's some pressure on c2 here, but it's defended. Okay, so knight b1, knight e1. The point. This was the point of the previous move. In fact, black is now forced to exchange off the attacking bishop on d3, but with that, even white's knight enters the fray with fearful effect at d3. Notes here are actually this is just a mock. This is a mock game. The engine thinks black's actually winning this, by the way, this particular position, with a move like bishop b5. But let's not go into that. Let's just imagine black. It's the idea of overprotection is emphasised with this exaggerated game. Anyway, so we have knight takes d3. So that was a mistake, relatively speaking. Knight takes. Rook takes c2. Rook A, E1, White just continues. A5, King D1. And here, the counter-attack has no punch. Black would naturally like to get a passed pawn plus a rook on the 7th, but it's far too late for that. So after King D1, we have Rook C6. Now the menaced rook must scurry back, for the capture on A2 would be much too dangerous. So at last Black gets the right idea, overprotecting his pawn on E6. Okay, but it's already too late. We have Rook E2, King E7. Introduced into tournament play by myself, see note to White's 14th move. The king overprotects E6. Yes, we've got an overprotection of E6, but I don't think that's too worrisome. Rook H E1, Rook E8, completing now Knight F3, completing the overprotection of E5. So you can see everything's geared on E5, thus deciding the fate of the game. Black has no defense. Note the aesthetic effect created by White's position. Bishop F8. and Black now threatens to complete the overprotection of E6 by playing Knight G7. So you can see everything's overprotecting E6 here, apart from this bishop. But White has prepared a brilliant combination. So we have G4, okay, G4, HG, Queen H7. Now one clearly realizes the masterly understanding of the position which went into White's 8th move, Queen H2. Basically, okay, G takes F3 was played in this fictional game. Had Black continued by overprotecting with Knight G7, there would have followed Bishop G5 check, F6, Bishop takes, King F7, Knight G5 checkmate. Okay, so we have G takes F3. Now Bishop G5 checkmate. So one of my best games. I'm proud of it, only because her Systemson is one of the strongest Scandinavian players. The game made an overwhelming impression on the players and spectators, as well as on my opponents. The game has become famous in Denmark as the immortal overprotection game. Okay, but anyway, so someone was taking a piss out of Nimzowitsch with this game. It's just a fictional game, but it was based on the one we saw earlier, I believe. Seems to have used quite a bit of time on this so far. Anyway, so overprotection. Are you all convinced? You want to overprotect E5? Very convincing stuff, isn't it? So on that note, let's go on to another game now, away from Nimzowitsch. But it's quite funny stuff. If you haven't got my system, you're missing out on a cultural chess book of the highest order, and you can find all sorts of stuff, not just overprotection but other stuff. But yeah, that was someone sort of taking the piss out of his overprotection. And okay, this other game, Richard Reti against Bogolojubov, notes by Alexander Alekheim. The game we just saw now was a piss take of the game I showed you before, which I believe actually was played. Someone wanted to sort of exaggerate Nimzowitsch, you know, that he has these concepts in his book My System, and they all seem to work from his examples. But actually, you know, if you look at the examples, sometimes they actually had really bad king safety. So the mock the mock fictional game showed that black walked into something, and in fact there were wins for black all over the place, but black just neglected their king safety. But as though it kind of proves the overprotection of e5, so they were sort of taking the piss out of Nimzowitsch that sometimes perhaps in my system he's exaggerating the importance of concepts, yeah, because of particular games that end in a certain way. So anyway, so Richard Reti against Boglojbov. So 1924, we have knight f3, d5. Got notes by Alexander Alekine here. c4, e6, g3, knight f6. We have so hypermodern approach, a double fianchetto by Richard Reti. And to our way of thinking, this is notes by Alekine, this is the clear positional refutation of e6. Note also the overprotection of e5 here. Look how white is focused on e5 as well. No, let's get away from Nimzowitsch. So this was first played by Capablanca as black against Marshall, and is based upon the simple circumstance that black cannot find a method for an effective development of his queen's bishop. Yes, locking down e5 does seem to kill the c8 bishop. We have c6, knight bd2. In a game referred to, Capablanca is in a wholly analogous position, played knight e4, and likewise at the same an advantage. Of course, Reti's quieter development is also quite good. Knight e4. If the liberating move of e5, recommended by Rubinstein and others, is really the best here, then it furnishes the most striking proof that black's entire arrangement of his game was faulty. For the simple continuation, let's have a quick look at e5. Alekine reckons c takes, d takes, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, knight c4, using the pin, rook e8, knight e3, bishop e6, queen d4. Would have given white a direct attack against the isolated queen's pawn without permitting the opponent any chances whatsoever. Moreover, the move selected by Boglojbov leads eventually to a double exchange of knights without moving the principal disadvantage of his position. So anyway, this, from an entry point of view, this is almost a clear advantage for white, but not quite. It's a slight advantage. It is pretty dominant blockade here. So anyway, so that wasn't played e5. We just have this knight e4 instead. That was taken, and then knight e5, keeping that lock on the e5 square. Now black played f5, obviously forced, apparently, because we are threatening bishop takes e4. f3, the proper strategy. After black has weakened his position in the centre, white forthwith must aim to exchange the closed game into an open one in order to make as much as possible out of that weakness. So we have e takes, bishop takes f3. Note, not e takes f3, because the e pawn must be utilised as a battering ram. Yeah, this is Alexander Alekine's notes. We need that e pawn as a battering ram. Just in case you were wondering, yeah, it looks a bit isolated at the moment, but it's a battering ram there. Okay, so we have queen c7. Note that also after knight takes, d takes, bishop c5 check, king g2, bishop d7, e4, white would have retained a decisive advantage in position. Actually, you know, technically I just think it's about equal here actually. So I don't know if he's a bit exaggerating as well. I don't know if Alekine sounds almost These guys had big egos, you know, Nimzowitsch and Aron. I don't know, maybe they were convinced maybe about this, but it doesn't seem as though it's that terrible, this position. So anyway, so Queen C7, we have knight takes, bishop takes, E4, E5. Otherwise, White would follow with E5, of course, to be followed by a break by means of either D5 or G4. After the text move, however, so E5, Black appears to have surmounted the greater part of his early difficulty, and it calls for exceptionally fine play on the part of White in order to maintain the hidden advantages of his position, so that so to make them count so rapidly and convincingly. We have C5, bishop F8, now Queen C2, attacking simultaneously both of Black's centre pawns. E takes D4. Black's sphere of action is circumscribed. For example, F takes E4. We would clearly not do on the account of the twofold threat against H7 and E5. After bishop takes E4, we're hitting H7 and E5, right? So we can't have that. So that's why here we have E takes D4. White plays E takes F5. Rook A D8. If Black had tried Rook E5, maybe like hitting that pawn and that one, we have Queen C4 check, King H8, and F6. F6, among other lines, would be strong. Actually, in this position, strong is also like just taking here, according to technical resources here. Because if it takes, we have bishop E4, and this is nasty after takes. This is a nasty position here, because White is threatening bishop C2, I think, and Queen D3. Just to show this. With the bishops like this and the queen here, I think we want a battery on H7. Just give a token move here. We play this. I believe the threat is Queen D3, and I don't think Black is in a position. Say you got this position, Black's not in a position to do anything here. So that would be a better way. Yeah, Black's not in a position to do much there. Okay, so anyway, we have here we have Rook A D8, Bishop H5 was played. The initial move in an exactly calculated, decisive maneuver, the end of which will worthily crown White's model play. This is a pretty strong move indeed. There might even be another strong move though, bishop D4. We can have a look at another time later. But we'll go with bishop H5, Rook E5. Now bishop takes D4, Rook takes F5. If Rook D5, then we have Queen C4, King H8, bishop G4 with a pawn up and a superior position. In fact, in this position, there's even the resource bishop F3 technically, which is beyond Alekhine's analysis at the time. This position again, if we get this position like this is just killing on H7, I believe. It looks fairly like killing, or it looks like a killing position. This position here, it looks as though Black's in big trouble. So anyway, so Rook takes F5 was played, not Rook D5. We have Rook takes F5, Bishop takes, Queen takes, Rook takes D4, and in this position the back row is pretty weak, isn't it? Okay, Now here, rook d8 was played. The back row is pretty weak. If we played queen e7, then check here, bishop d5 interrupts here and threatens queen takes f8. And if we follow with this with queen f6, queen c8, yeah, hitting the queen and rook, black is left without any defense. Okay, that does look horrible. So yeah, so in this position we had rook d8, but now check king h8, and another sort of crushing tactical move now is played. Can you see this last move, move 25, white's play? Described as a sparkling conclusion, so it causes black to resign. So do you know what the move is which causes black to resign? By the way, I should note there's a much simpler version of my system called Simple Chess by Michael Steen, which I recommended only earlier today on Quora. So if you don't want something too mega egocentric or exaggerated, but I do recommend, however, you still get my system because it is a cultural book in chess. But the simple version is called Simple Chess by Steen, and you can actually download that to your Kindle or mobile phone. I've got that Simple Chess as well. So the move here, by the way, yes, have you guessed it? It's an interruption tactic, like we saw just earlier. Bishop is interrupting d8 f8, threatening this queen takes f8. So the bishop can't move. Black resigned. Bishop can't move, really, because actually, even though that's check, we can just take that, and that's hopeless. Or bishop e7, we just take here, and we got a back row mate. Yep. Or rook takes here, we just take on f8, back row mate. Or if well, there's nothing much else. Queen e7, we just take on f8 because of that interruption we've created. Yeah. So basically, this game was awarded the first Brilliancy Prize. So I'm not sure. I hope you found that game interesting. Just run for it. Let's run for it again. I just appreciate it. It is kind of interesting, you know, this game. It's quite fascinating. The double fianchetto, to me, what's fascinating looking at now this game is in the variations where, you know, when both the fianchetto bishops come to the center, it seems they can be regrouped with decisive effect against h7. So yeah, it's an interesting game. Again, you know, these concepts, you can shed them in a good light by having a nice crushing king side attack after in your example. That adds credibility to the examples of whatever sophisticated ideas you have in chess. If you can demonstrate them and it all ends up in a nice attack after, that's adds some credibility, I think. But there's also an element of overprotecting key points here in this game. Anyway, so I know this has been particularly waffly this week. Yeah, but yeah, Nimzowitsch My System is definitely, it's an essential from a cultural point of view. It doesn't matter if you want to be a GM or whatever. It's just a cultural book you've got to get. Yeah, he tried to sort of make it an entire system. You know, all the procedures of chess, rook on the 7th, blockade is a massive theme, blockade, which is of great practical value. So there's a whole loads of things for Nimzowitsch. For Richard Reti, you know, one of the leading hypermodernists, you know, his double fianchetto here worked like a treat as well, and it looked like quite a modern game in many respects. Okay, so I'm gonna go now. Okay, thanks. If you like this session at all, yeah, vote up the video. Okay, and see you next week. Thanks very much.